It went from being the most beautiful fall day to such a rainy, dreary situation outside right now. I'm like, it's like hot in my house, but I feel like I need to be cozy. Like I just cannot figure out what is in store for today. Oh well, that's fine. So initially today I was going to post this almost rant-like video that I had recorded as I was driving home from my studio just last Thursday, but after looking over it again, I decided that even though it perhaps could have been entertaining, I wasn't speaking super kindly about one of the more important people at my studio, and I actually really do appreciate all the work that person puts in a lot. So I'm not going to be posting that, but instead it inspired me to create a video with some helpful hints for etiquette around the ballet studio or atmosphere while still being able to stand up for yourself and have a backbone in your time there at the studio. I think for adults especially, the first time that you show up at a ballet establishment, it can be a little bit overwhelming, the atmosphere aside with the high mirrors, high ceilings, loud music, lots of people. That is overwhelming, but there's a whole other culture and behavioral standard that seems to exist in ballet that is abnormal to most people that haven't been dancing their whole life. I can't figure out my scarf. I don't know. I'm cold, I'm not, I'm cold. Ugh. No, we're ditching it. I'll just be cold. At the very end, I'll share what happened to me on Thursday to prompt this video in the kindest way that I can and phrase it. But first, here are my helpful hints. When you first arrive to the studio, you should probably take your shoes off right away. If you're not comfortable wearing socks, then you can bring a second pair of shoes to put on, or if you yourself are the dancer, you can change into your dance shoes right away. Oh, kitty, baby. Check in with whoever is there at the front, whether it be someone working reception or the teacher that's there, perhaps even other students. Especially if it's your first time, it's important to make your presence known in case you need to sign in or provide anything. Of course, these days you might need to provide proof of vaccination or any of those things. Studios are generally a more intimate setting where everybody knows everybody. So if you are showing up to the building for the first time, it's important that you explain who you are and what you do. There are a lot of people of vulnerable ages and situations that are in that place, and teachers are interested in their care. So announce yourself as somebody unthreatening. Before you go into the studio, make sure that you have everything with you that you might possibly need. So this could be additional warm-ups, your shoes, a water bottle, an extra hair elastic if you need that, and that everything you don't need, you leave outside the studio in a changing space. So that's your bag, clothes that you needed to remove, your phone. Not many people probably want to hear that one, but I think that a studio should be a phone-free setting unless you're intentionally recording something, or you're a mom and you need to stay connected, but it should still be tucked away in a bag, or a dad or a parent figure. When you do enter the studio, it's a normal thing to begin stretching or warming up in whatever manner you see fit before starting the dance class. So this means if you're early, you're absolutely welcome to go into the studio ahead of time, warm up and chat with the other dancers. Of course, keeping volume to a normal level, but there's no reason to whisper or anything unless that's a specific rule to a studio. When the teacher arrives, it's normal for them to announce their presence when they're ready to start the class. So just because they walk into the room doesn't mean complete silence has to fall over. They'll let you know when the class is about to start. When that does start, ideally they would have done attendance and taken your name and introduced themselves. I think that it's still important you refer to the teacher in whatever manner they introduce themselves, even if they're a different age than you are. If you're older than the teacher, if they introduce themselves as, Miss this or Madam this or Mr. whatever, however they want to present themselves, you should respect what they say. Miss Shanette, Elise, Madam Shanette, Jedi Master, whatever they want to be referred to as, respect that title. If there's anything that you think is going to interrupt your performance in the class that day, let the teacher know right away at the beginning. If you have an injury and you might not be executing movements to your full range of motion, let them know. If you need to leave early, let them know when. You don't have to let them know why unless you are a competitive student, in which case that's a bigger deal. If it's just a recreational class, it's less important. It's just a matter of etiquette. But if you are there in a more professional or pre-professional setting, then you need to provide reasoning for your absence. During class, pretty much all the normal rules that you would expect in a regular school setting apply. Don't talk when the teacher's talking. Don't speak or make any unnecessary noise when the music is playing. Don't chit-chat too much with other people in the studio. This is a place of focus, and no matter what age you are, if you're 4 or if you're 40, we're always training discipline. Memorization of movement, proper execution, safety, respect. Those are all sort of encompassed under that discipline title. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. Like, we're not like disciplining you with a stick to the back of your knees anymore. It's more about the fact that you will be a more successful ballet dancer if you have greater discipline. I can't confirm if that's the same in other styles. I know, of course, that there are a lot of choreographers and teachers out there that welcome a little bit more, I'll say, chaos in their class. They want you to bring those external experiences in. They want you to share with the rest of the class how you're feeling that day and bring that into your dancing. And I do think that that is an important form of the art of it. But for a ballet class, it's a place of study mostly, unless you're doing some kind of choreography piece at the end. So of course, use your own life experiences to give meaning to your movement and your dancing, but those don't have to necessarily be communicated vocally during the class or in any kind of excessive way. Typically at the end of a class, a reverence is performed. To my younger dancers, I explain this as your bows and your curtsies. You can choose whether or not you want to bow or curtsy at the end. It's a very historically gendered movement. Usually the man would do a little bow and the woman would do a curtsy. I teach both to all ages that I teach and allow anybody to do either option. They're both just considered a sign of respect to the teacher and the if there's a musician present, to the musician as well. So if you find that your teacher isn't doing this, you can do that thing differently. You don't have to copy exactly what they're doing for this moment at the very end of class. You could do a bow or you could do a curtsy. Whatever resonates most with how you want to express yourself, as long as your technique is there. We want a little bit of turnout usually and coordination of the arms and legs. That's all. At the end of the class, when you thank the teacher, it's just a quick, thank you, Master Yoda, whatever, and then you can leave. Some other situations that might come up that don't exist every day. If you show up late, wait until the exercise that the people are doing inside is finished and the music stops, and then enter. Never come in the middle of an exercise, never, ever, ever, or the middle of a dance. Don't do that. If you do experience pain or an injury halfway through an exercise, absolutely stop. But I wouldn't do so in a way that has the others stop dancing as well. Unless it's something like a heart attack where we're going to have to call an ambulance, allow the other dancers to finish their performance of the movement before you let the teacher know what you are experiencing. If you notice that the teacher is explaining a combination in a different way than the sequence that you initially learned, you can absolutely put your hand up and let them know that the movement might be wrong. Odds are they're teaching multiple classes in a week and they might not get the counts and steps exactly right every single time. So definitely make your voice heard if that's the case. If you have choreographic suggestions, keep them to yourself unless you are prompted. Or you could approach the teacher outside of class hours. Don't try and take over the class halfway through, even if you do consider yourself better qualified. It's a sign of respect, and you're there for their class. If you don't like it, you can stop going. Other random things. If you need to go to the washroom, ask and go. If you need to get a drink of water, just get a drink. Normally you don't have to ask. Never touch the piano. Don't touch the mirror. Don't swing on the bar. There are so many no's that I'm hearing come out of my mouth. Like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. I know, I'm sorry if it's overwhelming. I'm just trying to be helpful. I had a student once with a service animal. You could definitely bring those. I would just call ahead probably if it's their first time at the studio to let them know in case there is anything that the teacher wants to prepare. I actually wasn't told that there was going to be a service animal in my class, so when they showed up with this giant dog, I was a little taken aback. Like, absolutely bring support system, but yeah, just some warning would have been nice. I think that's it. If you have any questions, let me know. And I mean, I've been in the studio environment in many different cities since I was 6, so I have probably experienced whatever is happening in your situation. But my story, something that happened to me. As a dancer, you of course have a specific way that you're expected to behave and present yourself as, and that doesn't change as you become a teacher. There is still an etiquette to follow, and unfortunately so, a bit of a hierarchy to respect, and sometimes it can get a little bit blurred and confused. So what happened to me on Thursday, I teach only 2 classes. They're only 45 minutes long, and it's an early dance, so they're 4, and a second one where they're 5. They're not the smallest classes in the studio. Like, there's definitely enough students in them, but I think because of their younger age, they're occasionally not as respected, which I think is a little bit silly. They're still showing up to give their energy to this space and this craft, and they're the minds that we want to cultivate into this art, into dance. We want them to come back in further years, so I think that we should prioritize those younger ones. But I'm getting sent off on a tangent. Anyway, there was an event happening at my studio on this Thursday evening, and my first class went off without a hitch. It was, what was it, like 4 to 4:45 or something. And then a little boy couldn't find his mom, so I went with him we were gonna go search just over by the washrooms. And in order to get there, we have to walk through a studio. There's one studio that doesn't have doors on the end. It's only a hallway, basically, with a piano and a bar and a mirror and everything. It's still a full functioning studio, but it's a little bit more distracting. And on our way back, we couldn't find his mom, so we were just going back to the waiting area. I'm sort of have my hands full at this point because I have another class waiting to begin right after. So it's now like probably 4:47 or something. I'm late starting my other class, and I'm walking with this boy, and I run into somebody who is employed at the studio who is amazing, and I respect you a lot, and you were put under a lot of pressure, I think, in this situation, and I absolutely do not blame you for putting me on this spot either. Like, you clearly were dealing with a lot in that moment. So she asks me how I would feel about changing the location of my class from our regular studio with our closed door to this studio that is basically a hallway. I take a look around, and it's literally the studio where the event is going to take place. There's a table set up with open food everywhere. There's like grapes and cookies and crackers and all of that. There are wine glasses and bottles of wine behind it, and a couple of chairs stacked on the other side. So the bar is completely inaccessible, which wasn't super important for the age group that I was with. We weren't going to use the bar anyway, but still kind of odd that they were utilizing that much space. And my class had already technically started. So I looked at her and I said, like, am I allowed to say no here? Because absolutely not. Not a chance. Clearly something was going on, and they needed a more private space to run, I think it may be an older class or a different workshop, and they wanted to use my space instead. But I hope, I don't know, maybe you can comment otherwise. I hope that I was right in saying that just because my class is younger doesn't mean that they need to be deprioritized. Younger students get even more disoriented when their routine is broken than any teen or adult would. Like, if they're in a new space with like a new speaker makes a difference, all that food out, like, I'm sure that they've seen it before, but just like having like alcohol behind there with the very fragile wine glasses just on display wasn't really something that I wanted my students to attribute a dance studio with. Not that I don't enjoy my occasional glass of Chianti or whatever, I'm really not picky. Just the whole thing was not something that I wanted to subject my dancers to, or myself, honestly. Like, my class was already supposed to start, and I was kind of worried that people were going to get frustrated with me for beginning late. Anyway, so I said no. I took the boy, we found his mom. I brought my other dancers straight into their regular studio and we had our class, and then I went home. I do feel a little bit guilty for not debriefing with this person afterwards, but in the moment I was flustered. I'm like, what a ridiculous request to ask of me after my class has already begun. Whatever, but obviously there were other things at play that were contributing to this moment of confusion. If it had happened before my class had actually started, if like as soon as I had arrived to the venue, I probably would have said yes and would have just requested that the table be set up afterwards. It was just because it was on the spot. Anyway, that's a whole other thing about respect and everything. So I hope I did the right thing. I will stop boring you with all of my studio rules, etc. And I will see you this Thursday for whatever's coming next.